Today, I'm going to do two things. This will be a typical video of replacing the glass on a damaged iPad Pro 2nd Gen. But also, I wanted to let you see the toolbox I use with everything I need for working on phones and tablets. To see how I roll, stay tuned. I recently picked up an iPad Pro off of eBay to try my hands at fixing something more high-end than what I'm used to working on. When fixing inexpensive devices, I tend to be less worried about the outcome because a failure on a $50 device is nowhere as bad as a failure on a $500 device. So today, I'm using the tools I've accumulated over recent months to see if I can disassemble and replace the screen on this 10.5-inch 2nd Gen A1701 iPad Pro. The price was reasonable enough, and after researching how much the replacement parts would cost, I felt an iPad Pro could be a good investment as long as there were no other unexpected repair costs. As you've probably seen many times in other YouTube videos, I'm going to first separate the two halves of the iPad to see if only the glass is cracked or if there's more to it than what can be seen from the outside. What I'm going to use is this mini iron called a Cricut. It's used for ironing clothes, but it's a mini version to make it easier for some of the smaller ironing tasks. The reason I picked this up was because it was smaller than a hot air station, a heating gun, or a heating pad. Also, in testing, it worked, and it also fits easily in my toolbox. One thing I did before attempting this repair was to watch a recent Hugh Jeffreys video where he dismantles the same iPad Pro. I'm not sure where there might be cables near the edges, so watching videos like this beforehand really helps. Using the Cricut to heat the device is the same as with any other heating tool. Heat the edges to melt the glue and slowly use a plastic pry tool to separate the halves. The Cricut has 3 modes of heat, but for this usage scenario, I usually set it to the highest temperature. The Cricut beeps when it's hot enough, at which point I'll start off heating just the corners, then heat the long edge also. About a minute of heating should melt the glue enough to begin prying with a razor. Starting about an inch from the corner, I'll start the separation with the razor. I'm pushing it straight down into the crease between the screen and the device edge, then prying the screen edge upward high enough to slide the pick under it. I'll continue heating and lifting the screen, making my way completely around the perimeter of the iPad. As I go, I'll also slide strips under the edge of the screen so it doesn't re-adhere to the case. The last thing to do to remove the screen is to loosen the battery clamp, then remove the screws and connections for the screen flex cables. Pry off and hold on to the bracket for the front-facing camera, which needs to be re-glued back onto the new screen. Remove the home button connector, then pry up the flex cable, which is glued down. Remove the button and the bracket together, all of which must be transferred to the new screen. I'm going to finish up by removing the leftover glue from the case to prepare it for reassembly. Right now, I have most of what I need to reassemble the screen of this iPad Pro, except one thing. I'm still awaiting a new shipment of my tape to come in, but it's estimated to be delivered in 7 days. That's the speedy service of Amazon Prime. Also, I ordered the tape 2 days ago. Anyway, rather than wait for the tape to come in, I decided to try something different. To fix my iPad, I've decided to try Goop, the glue I use for almost every other project except fixing devices. I've tested this glue in the past as something to use in device assembly, and it actually adheres really well to glass and metal and can be removed very easily with heat. In fact, a lot easier than most other device adhesives. The trouble though is Goop is just what its name implies. It's really thick and there's no way I know of to thin it out. The other hurdle is that Goop skins really fast, I'd say within 30 seconds. After that, to get something to stick to a small glob of Goop, you'd have to really work it into the glue. It's possible, but it's just a warning so you know. And finally, there's the issue of having to wait for glue to dry. For non-structural connections, it's 12 hours. If the piece will deal with forces applied to it, like the home button, it's 24 hours. Pieces like the camera bracket and screen should be fine after 12 hours. To start, I'm going to add all the small pieces taken from the old screen and put them onto this new screen, starting with the front-facing camera bracket. It's only been about 3 hours since I put the camera bracket on, but I realized I should be able to handle the screen lightly, so I decided to also mount the home button. I'm not exactly sure how the home button works, but I'll try to mount it the way I saw it being done in videos and hope it's working in 24 hours. For myself, this bracket is the tricky part. I can see where it needs to provide a backing for the button press dimple on the back side of the button. I'll glue it in place, then test it when the glue has dried. All the button needs to do is click when pressed. I'll see how that goes. So, it's actually about 2 weeks later since I last worked on the iPad, and the tape I ordered for doing projects like this has long since come in. But, I think for the rest of this repair, I'm still going to stick with testing the goop glue, just for my own knowledge of how it works. So, back to the home button. It feels a little unresponsive. I can just barely feel a click when I press it, but it's a very short press. If I had to guess, I'd say it's only depressing about 1/64th of an inch, where normal might be about 1/32nd of an inch. To be sure it was working correctly, I did mount the screen and set up the iPad Pro for use, and it works fine. The screen is responsive, and the button seems to be working correctly, though I'm not a typical Apple user, so I may not know all the different ways to use the button. Press, long press, and double press do different things, and when setting up my fingerprint, that went well and I can log in using my fingerprint. I'm going to say the home button works, so now I just need to put everything back together permanently, but still using goop. I'm going to use some alcohol to give everything a quick wipe down because I have been handling the screen and chassis quite a bit before getting to this point. It'll take off the fingerprints and oil I can see I've left behind. The worst part of reconnecting the screen has got to be getting the screen connected with a flex cable that's just barely long enough to allow this. If it was even 1 inch longer, would have helped substantially, but instead, it's a struggle connecting the cable, then even tougher trying to screw the cover in place. It took me a good 15 minutes to get this screen connected on the 3rd try. As I mentioned, I'm going to stick with testing my reassembly using goop, so here I go. I think it took me about 5 minutes to get all the glue onto the perimeter of the chassis edge, which I'm hoping that amount of time will not cause the screen to delaminate from the chassis when the glue dries in 24 hours. With some sheets of paper folded in half on the screen, a sheet of wood on top of that, and something to weigh it down, I'll check on this screen in 24 hours. The drawback to gluing the screen the way I did was that it's not a continuous layer of glue, so there is the potential for water to get in. I don't think dust will get in easily because the edges are snug against the chassis, but we'll see how that looks like tomorrow. Also, I wanted to show you my toolbox where I keep most of the tools I need for working on tablets and phones. I like using fishing tackle boxes because they're durable, lightweight, and compartmentalized to separate small and large items. Spread out on my table saw is everything I keep in this compact and very portable toolbox. A voltage meter, screwdriver set, different pry tools, alcohol, project box, suction pullers, two-sided adhesives, cutters, and a mini iron. Most of the tools I use are permanent fixtures in my toolbox, but for some of them, I'm deciding whether I should switch them out for something else. One recent change I made was switching from lacquer thinner to alcohol. Alcohol had been impossible to find in the last 6 months, but recently I found some locally. One thing I like more than what most people use are the guitar picks. I usually purchase the extra heavy type. They are thicker than the blue picks most people use, but I like them because of their thickness and durability. So far with what I've encountered on smartphones, it seems like when I need a thin pry tool, a razor works best for prying to separate the piece, then switching to the guitar pick to avoid cutting any cables near the edge. This may not work for everyone's taste, but it works for me. Another uncommon tool I like to use is this mini iron. It has 3 settings for heat, which I'm still learning how to use, but I feel it makes removing screens easier. When I used it to remove the iPad Pro screen in this video, I used the highest setting. Since then, I found that I can set it to the lowest setting and leave the iron to heat up the screen. The nice thing is that I don't have to hold the iron in place. Just set it on the screen and wait. Once the screen is hot enough, pry up that section while the iron is sitting on the next section. I'll probably change tools every now and then when I find more practical tools to use, but as long as these tools work for me, I'll probably stick with them. After 24 hours, the glue had toughened up enough so I could use a razor to remove the excess around the edges. I started with the razor because it's not a good idea to peel it off by hand. Goop is a pretty thick and strong glue, so pulling on the excess glue could pull it out from under the things it's gluing together. Probably one reason to like using glue rather than tape is because glue is more forgiving. If you place glass down out of alignment, with glue it's easy to slide it into alignment. Tape doesn't allow this. Again, different people will have their own preference. So I finally have my first Apple device ever for personal use. This 2017 10.5-inch iPad Pro cost me $175, and to replace the screen cost $180 for a total of $355. I also bought a TPU case for $10 and will be getting a screen protector soon to make sure I protect my investment. I felt having an Apple device around the home, even though I am a dedicated Android user, would be helpful for comparing how I would get tasks done on either platform, especially how I do video editing. I would be interested to see how it could be done on iOS. Who knows, maybe I could be enticed to finally migrate, but for now, Android gets it done. I hope you've gotten some helpful advice from this video. Leave your questions and comments in the comment section below. That's all I have for now, and I'll catch you in the next video.